license agreement is a contract between two parties. As a patent claims example, a patent owner or a licensor and a licensee are those two parties that spell out the rules under which the licensee is allowed to create, sell and utilize a patented invention. इस अग्रीमेंट में एक पेटेंट ओनर को क्या रॉयल्टीज का कॉम्पनसेशन मिल सकता है और कई ऐसी राइट्स के बारे में स्पेसिफाई किया जाता है. So, a patent claims example, or basically a patent license agreement, is a contract between a patent holder and a licensee that has been negotiated. Once the details of an agreement have been discussed, the parties sign a contract in which the patent holder or a licensor agree करता है ताकि जो लाइसेंसी है वो उसे यूज, क्रिएट, सेल या इंपोर्ट जैसे ऑप्शंस इनेबल कर सके. सो एज अ पेटेंट क्लेम्स एग्जाम्पल, जिसके पास लाइसेंस होगा वो उन पेटेंटेड इन्वेंशंस को एक पेटेंट क्लेम की मदद से कहीं भी फी के बदले यूज कर सकता है. तो इस इंट्रोडक्शन के बाद हम पढ़ेंगे कि एक पेटेंट क्लेम्स एग्जाम्पल में क्या क्या आ सकता है. So the forms of patent license agreements are exclusive, non-exclusive and sole licenses. These are the three primary patent claims example, each of which grants various rights to the parties involved. Firstly, an exclusive patent license agreement offers a single licensee complete control over the invention's production, sale and use. Secondly, a non-exclusive patent license agreement transfers these rights as well as, but it also allows the licensor to negotiate and execute agreements with third parties. Thirdly, a sole license is in the middle, allowing both the licensor and the licensee to utilize the innovation, but the licensor normally agrees not to avoid additional licenses. तो इसी के साथ हम अपने अगले और आखिरी सब टॉपिक की तरफ बढ़ते हैं जो बहुत लंबा है लेकिन उतना ही इम्पोर्टेंट है. अब हम उन 13 की प्रोविजंस के बारे में जानेंगे जो एक NRI या रेजिडेंट इंडियन फॉर दैट मैटर should include in their patent claims example. So our first clause is identification of the parties. अब वो पर्सन जिसके पास अथॉरिटी है परमिट देने की और वो पर्सन जिसके पास रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है उस परमिट को कैरी करने की एक पेटेंट लाइसेंस अग्रीमेंट में आते हैं. तो इस क्लॉज में द आइडेंटिफाइंग इंफॉर्मेशन ऑफ बोथ द पार्टीज that are participating in the contract is included in the identity section of a licensing agreement. When the licensee is a company, the company's registered name is stated. If the licensor or licensee is a person, the name and address of the home must be provided. So with this our second clause comes, which is recital clause. अब एक recital clause में लाइसेंस के बनने का प्रोसेस और हिस्ट्री के बारे में लिखा होता है. The recital clause also makes reading the arrangement easier. The recital clause explains what the agreement's objectives or principles is. If the licensee asks that the licensee keep the licensee's patent, technologies, production rights, and the recital clause should, for example, spell out the steps leading into a contract. So our third clause is definition clause. तो इसके नाम से ही पता चल गया होगा कि इस क्लॉज के अंदर डिक्शनरी जैसा होता है जिसमें सारी डेफिनेशंस लिखी है important terms की. So the transaction should be guided by clearly stated important words. It's important to remember that if a term or words in the agreement are defined, that definition takes precedence over all other common sense, because the entire transaction is centered on the same thing. The permitted products or materials should be precisely mentioned. Our fourth clause is license clause. Now it specifies the scope and extent of the licensee's privileges as well as any restrictions, what the licensee is entitled to do with the grants. Plain and valid language must be determined specifically. This provision may have imposed some restrictions on licenses. The sub-licensing constraint, for example, affects the fundamental character when the task is permitted and so on. हमारा पांचवा clause है payment clause. अब इस क्लॉज के अंदर रनिंग रॉयल्टीज, अक्रूवल पेमेंट, accounting statements, interest, books and records, and audits are all discussed privately in this clause. A royalty is a payment made from one party to another that owns a certain asset for the right to utilize that item indefinitely. Now, in place of a flat sum payment, running royalties are remuneration provided to the licensee or franchisor based on the number of units sold or created. Our sixth clause is indemnification clause. Now, indemnity is a protection against potential harm or loss, specifically the promise of payment or the money that will be paid if such damage or loss occurs. The licensee or licensor indemnification under the agreement are mentioned in this clause. This provision provides for a claim for indemnity or payment when a defendant or indemnifier promises to avoid any harm, losses, or carelessness caused by the indemnifier or any third party's conduct from any legal implications. The fundamental value of the compensation on provision is the transfer of a responsibility from one party to another in its entirety or in part. अब हमारा सेवंथ क्लॉज है जिसके अंदर आता है टर्मिनेशन. The termination clause establishes the terms under which the agreement shall be terminated or cancelled. Now, cancellation is possible under the contractual obligations are met. Termination terms can still be customized, but most deals employ standard clauses. The termination provision spells out the circumstances under which the parties can end their legal relationship and contractual responsibilities. The parties may cancel the agreement under company law if there is a serious or fundamental breach of the agreement. So our next clause is representations and warranties of the licensor. Now the licensor's representations and warranties are defined in this section. A representation is a statement of truth that induces a party to enter into a contract. The declaration made before or at the time of the contract's formation refers to a historical fact or present condition that is relevant to the contract and affects the contracting party. In this, a warranty is also there, which is an obligation or a condition that a fact is or will be claimed or promised in regard to the subject of a contract, and that the arrangement protects if any harmful effect is taking place. That is an implicit compensation. In our ninth clause, we have the representations and warranties of the licensee. The licensee's representations and warranties are defined under this section. A representation statement of truth that induces a party to enter into a contract. The declaration made before or at the time of the contract's formation refers to um, again the historical or present condition that is relevant to the contract. It also affects the contracting party. As discussed before, also it also includes warranty which will be claimed or promised in regard to the subject of a contract, and also the agreement which protects the receiver from harmful effects. Now, for our 10th clause, we have relationship of parties clause. As a result of the agreement, the parties' relationship is defined by a partnership between parties provision. और more broadly it establishes that जो parties हैं उनके पास एक specific arrangement हो. For example, no agreement or employee-employer relationship. This is also known as a no contract clause or an independent contractor clause. The provision would also make it clear that neither party has the ability to act on behalf of the other or to legally bind the other. Next is our assignment clause. The assignment clause specifies which statutory rights, privileges, and obligations can be transferred from one party to the other. The assignment may be complete or partial, and the clause also specifies the conditions under which the party may delegate such responsibilities. It also mentions successors' obligations. To put it Another way, the assignment clause deals with the transfer of a responsibility or merit object from one entity to another. Our 12th clause includes dispute resolution clause. Under this clause, it is specified how the parties will resolve any issues that arise as a result of their agreement. It might include both contractual and non-contractual disputes. इसका एग्जाम्पल हो सकता है कि disagreements over the purpose and effect of a certain contract clause. तो एक पार्टी है A who has alleged that party B is deficient in its execution of the contract, so they can hold it against the other party as a dispute resolution provision. Now, it's also critical to make sure that the dispute resolution clause is clear, concise, and practical. So, our last 13th clause contains other common clauses like severability or survival clause and others. Thank you.